I literally, since I was in high school, wanted to build a technology company in New York and take it public. I don't know why. It's like a weird thing for a 16-year-old to talk about. Howard just said in the microphone, we're doing 20 million of revenue. And you could hear the whole place get like silent. People are terrible at people management. We're just not wired to do it well as humans for a whole variety of reasons. The advice I give founders, frankly, is to try to think through your capital needs, planning for as few rounds as possible. That's what's going to minimize dilution more than anything.
Hello and welcome to First Money In, a show focused on now extraordinary founders and their very first time ever raising venture capital. My name is Nicole Wishoff, and I am thrilled to bring you our latest episode. Today we welcome Brian Distelburger, co-founder of Yext. Yext is a digital presence platform that helps businesses manage their online information and connect with customers. Since launch in 2006, Yext raised over $100 million from investors like IVP and Sutter Hill. Join us as we learn more about the founding of Yext, building a startup in New York City far before it was a tech hub, pitching a TechCrunch disrupt after already doing $20 million in revenue, and going public at $1 billion valuation in 2017. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. Unlike most of these interviews, you started and helped take a company public, Yext. You started this pretty early for tech companies, right? There probably weren't that many and definitely not that many going public. Walk me through what you were doing before Yext and what led you to starting the company in 2006.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. I've been a follower of yours and a fan for a little bit, and wishing you great success with the new fund. But yeah, we started Yext when it was not popular to start technology companies. I had been starting different companies and different projects pretty much since I was a teenager, everything from doing a bunch of landscaping projects to running a gym out of my dorm room in college, and then started a motorcycle shop while I was in college. When I wrapped up school, I went to work at a company called Traffics. This was in 2001. They were a smaller public direct marketing company, and I was doing what was referred to then as database marketing, which was basically combining a bunch of like offers and deals with email lists of people and more or less spamming people. And did that really well, got to know the founders of that company really well. And we went on to found a company together in 2003 that was packaging privacy protection software and selling it directly to consumers. We built that to about 20 million of revenue. I was like very much the junior partner, had a little slice of it and wanted more of my own thing, and got to know Howard Lerman really well. And Howard was running a company. He had built a couple of companies, and he was running a company that one of my mentors, who was also his mentor, and that guy, his name is Jay Greenwald, really got us together. And we started really spending some time together. And then in 2006 started what became Yext.
Great. And where were you at the time? Were you in New York yet?
Yeah, so I'm local. I grew up just outside the city. At the time, I was living in New Jersey. I was living in Edgewater. We started the business out of like right by Columbus Circle. We had an office in 1845 Broadway.
Awesome. Whose idea was this? Did you link up and then come up with the idea, or did one of you say, hey, it's go time, I've got the thing?
So Howard had this idea around the gym and health club industry and basically more efficiently driving them customers. At that time, a big way gyms would acquire customers was just through people on the street and all kinds of in-person marketing stuff, and thought there was a more efficient way to drive customers. And so we started with launching a site called gymticket.com, where we were basically driving customers to gyms and health clubs across the country on a performance basis.
Interesting. Okay. Walk me through, what is the tech startup scene in New York back then? How many startups were even there? How many funds?
I mean, there was like nothing at that point. So this was the end of 2006. Everyone was still like going into finance. It was all like finance, media. There was starting to be like a little bit of ad tech stuff. Maybe Union Square was sort of starting around then, but there was very few funds, certainly not anything that we really came across on a regular basis. There was no, at least for us, no real tech community.
Interesting. I guess you maybe helped start it. So when I had messaged you on X and said, will you come on the pod to talk about your fundraising experience? You said, Nicole, there isn't really a spicy story. It was pretty straightforward. What does that mean? Because you successfully raised from Sutter Hill, but how much? What was that process like?
Yeah. So in today's terms, we had done the pre-seed ourselves, and we put, I think it was like around $250,000. And I'm going to get some of these details wrong, but it'll be directionally correct. For us, we were meat and potatoes, just trying to get the company profitable. We actually got cash flow positive by month 9. And once we started to see a little bit of bigger opportunity and realized we need a little capital to go after it, Howard and I had both known one of the Sutter Hill partners. His name was Andy Sheehan, who had put a bunch of money into Howard's last company, and he had looked at acquiring my previous company. And Andy would, every time he was in New York, it was like every 3-4 months, would swing by office and like wondering what we were up to. And he more or less was offering us a blank check for whenever we were ready. The only spicy part of doing that was I was responsible for all the legal and finance in the early days and just cleaning up what we needed to do to actually close a formal round.
Yeah.
And so
Do you remember how much you raised? And was the YC safe a thing back then?
it was not a thing. It was a price round. It was a little over $1.5 million. I honestly don't remember what the valuation was.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
so Andy basically did what today would probably be considered a seed. At the time was a Series A. And then I think it was around like a year and a half, maybe later, something like that. As we were starting to get some like real momentum and traction and ready for a little bit more money, he put in another $3.5 million, something like that.
I was going to ask you about that. So there isn't a ton online between '06 and '09. And it looks like the gap there is you went from like C to Series C. What was announced was a Series C with Sutter Hill, IVP. What was going on over those couple years?
Yeah, Sutter did the A and B. We didn't like run a process or anything like that. And then the C was a very different story. So we had sort of figured out this thing selling leads to like gyms and health clubs. And then we started expanding that and built this pay-per-call business where local businesses like a veterinarian, an auto repair shop, a chiropractor were paying us for driving them new customers. That worked really well. And we were able to do it with them on a performance basis. And so long story short, we built that to about 20 million of revenue. By 2009, and we decided at that point we were ready to we like did this under a rock. We in fact tried to have the outward perception of there's not much going on here, and we decided that we want to do something a little bit more public in 2009, and we were ready to start like really growing. We're thinking about raising some more money, and we were really like expanding the team and wanted some help recruiting. And so we decided to do a little competition for startups that TechCrunch was running called TC50, which they did for a few years. And part of it was like the startups would come up on stage and do a live demo. And so we were demoing our call technology, and it worked really well. People were really impressed, but there's a few finalists we were with. And then they did a round of questions, and someone, I think it might have been Marissa Mayer, asked Howard how much we were doing at that time, how much revenue we were doing. And these were all early stage startups. And I think everyone out there was out at the Moscone Center, I believe. I think all the investors and everyone certainly thought they had a handle on all the earlier stage companies, and certainly anyone that was doing any like sort of material revenue. And so Howard just said in the microphone, answered, "We're doing 20 million of revenue." And you could hear the whole place get like silent. Fast forward, like basically the next 2 weeks, we were staying in that Four Seasons in Palo Alto, and we basically meeting with IVP and Excel and all these different firms. And we would like start with one partner, and then we go back to the hotel and we think we like done and flying back to New York. And then they'd ask to meet with the whole partnership team. And it was like day after day, we were pretty much checking out of the hotel like every 2 days and then checking back in. We met a bunch of firms and ultimately decided to go with IVP, and they led that Series C at the end of 2009.
Was that your first time just picking your head up and doing the roadshow? I mean, you didn't really need to, right? Because you had Sutter Hill, so you weren't getting any inbound. I'm assuming you guys kept a low profile, so you just did what was efficient, right? And didn't try to shop it.
Yes, that was the introduction to us of running a real process.
Yeah. And when you were raising from IVP and like the hot girl at the party, if you will, like 20 million in revenue, did that kind of open your eyes to the whole new world for the first time? Like, man, there's a lot of fun. San Francisco's crazy.
Yes, it certainly did. I probably shouldn't mention this, but we used to refer to, obviously all the VCs are like on Sand Hill Road out there. We used to call it Sand Trap Road, and felt like we actually just needed to escape and get back to building the business and the company. And we were trying actually not to get distracted by all of the stuff going on.
Was it clear to you what you were optimizing for? Like at that time with a partner, Did you guys feel like you had what you needed? It was just capital and it was opportunistic?
No, it was basically as going through the process was really like a learning experience. And so we were trying to figure it out very quickly as we were going through. A person that really played a pivotal role guiding us was a guy named Mike Walrath, who's currently the CEO of Yext. And so Mike had built a company called Right Media and sold it to Yahoo for I think 850 million back when that was a huge number. And Mike was really someone Howard knew like a little bit. I knew a little bit. And we were fortunate enough that he was interested in what we were doing. And he's helped coach us through a lot of the process. And then he is a fund called WGI Group, which also participated. They'd mostly done early stage stuff and then participated in the Series C. Mike joined our board and then later became chair and still chair of the board also up to the IPO and then slid in as CEO a few years ago.
Wow. And then after that, you had ended up raising a lot more money. Do you remember the total before IPO, like how much you guys raised before you went public?
Yeah, it's roughly 120 million.
120. Okay. And you had raised from, it looks like Insight Partners came in and some other folks. Were you a part of all of those? I don't know, like at what point you and Howard both decided to leave.
Yeah, yes, I was there for everything. Howard definitely took more of the lead on the fundraising side as the CEO, but was there for every twist and turn. For sure. And we were really fortunate. To your question earlier about did we know what to optimize for? Not really. But IVP, I mean, we got a little bit lucky. We had Dennis Phelps was the partner that joined the board, and then Jules Maltz. He was a little more junior. He joined as a board observer at the time and then took Dennis's seat a little bit later on. And Jules was phenomenal. He was someone that through that process we felt was going to be like really, really helpful just with how to think about a lot of the different things from the financial side and was clearly seeing a lot and was really helpful as we were like thinking through different executive hires and stuff like that. He helped us really shape the process through there. And then later on, Marker, Insight in particular was great just from a sort of later stage scaling SaaS perspective. And Devin from Insight joined our board and he was just, I can't overstate how sharp he is. Running a company, you're like in the weeds all the time on all these like minute details. It always amazed me how he can just come in a board meeting and just look through some high level stuff and instantly jump to critical details for us to focus on or things we missed, frankly. He's amazing.
That is fantastic. For each of those rounds of funding that you raised on the growth side, were those preempted or did you guys only go to market when you needed a little bit more capital?
Let's see. The D and E rounds were a little non-traditional in the sense that we had basically built up this relatively significant pay-per-call business. And in doing that, we realized the much larger opportunity, which is what Yext is known for now, the digital knowledge management piece. Mm-hmm. And so we basically spun out that pay-per-call business and sold it to IAC, actually. We put it in a subsidiary that was named Felix and sold that to IAC and used those proceeds to help fund Yext growth. But we had this pivotal point where we were taking whatever it was, $35 million business and telling all our investors, hey, this is great, but the real opportunity is this thing over here that's like a few $1 million. Trust us, it's going to be fine.
Interesting.
And so that was, we raised a little money through there. And so that
What year was that? Do you remember?
This was 2011, 2012, like around that timeline.
I read an article, and I think they were interviewing Howard, but he said that there were a few, I don't know if it's right to call them pivots, but a few kind of like dead ends that you guys went down. So it wasn't straight up and to the right, but it seems like you had a great partner in Sutter Hill where there was just always capital for you guys to figure it out.
Yes. Andy is still on Yext board. You couldn't ask for a better partner from an investment perspective. He was always supportive. And Howard said this before, we definitely had some existential decisions to make. And he was always supportive. And frankly, so were all the board members. People, different levels of concern, but ultimately everyone was supported and it worked out.
That's amazing. So you have obviously been around the tech ecosystem, arguably helped started it in New York. And now looking at rounds, talking to founders, I'm sure you do all the time about thinking about starting their companies. One, what is your feedback to founders often about fundraising? And two, you took a whole entire large company public raising only 120 million. I feel like the average amount of capital companies raise before they go public is over 500. So I don't know if you have a take on that, but it's just a different world.
It's certainly a different world. It's funny. I also think you can't look historically at a lot of those numbers. Like the stuff that's happened over, let's say, the past 10 years, my guess is it does not project forward very well. I think companies can actually get back to the way it used to be where they're pretty capital efficient. And so I'm really curious how this plays out. I think it's a healthy thing for companies to try to be capital efficient. As you think about company building, the more capital you have, the more shortcuts you're taking in a whole bunch of different ways. And it can certainly work out, but on balance, I don't think it's a healthy thing from a company building perspective to have more capital than you need. The advice I give founders, frankly, is to try to think through your capital needs, planning for as few rounds as possible. And that's what's going to minimize dilution more than anything.
Did you always know that you would want to take the business public, or that was the grand plan?
I literally, since I was in high school, wanted to build a technology company in New York and take it public. I don't know why. It's like a weird thing for a 16-year-old to talk about, but always admired IBM and Bloomberg. Bloomberg, I thought it was a technology company, not a media company. And so that always just seemed like a really cool thing to me. I was fortunate enough to be in that phase and growing up just as the internet was starting to become a thing, and was just fascinated by it and wanted to figure out a way to participate, which is not dissimilar from what's going on now in the world with the rise of AI. It feels like the same movies happening again, which is, for me, one of the reasons I'm excited to be doing what I'm currently doing.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that. Wrapping up Yext and your time there and Howard, at what point did you both leave? And he started a company and now you have as well.
Yeah, I think he officially left in March of 2022, something like that. And he's building a really, really cool company. I'm heavily biased. He's building an awesome company that I think he's going to be taking another company public called Rome, which is a virtual HQ and is frankly one of the coolest products. Him and I have this funny thing in common where Yext obviously is 400 plus million of ARR, and we had a lot of customers, but its customers didn't really love the product in the sense to have this sort of direct kind of emotional attachment to it. And I know he sees it from going to a bunch of his company events with Rome. And I think it's just like such a cool and fun thing. And I'm at an earlier stage with my new company, but we're starting to see it with some of our very early customers, which is fun. But so he 2022, and then I about a year and a half ago fully stepped out of an operating role and off the X board.
Got it. And then did you leave knowing that you would start something new and what that would be, or did you take some time off to figure it out?
I promised my wife and told everyone, whatever I do, I'm not starting a company, and no one who knows me well believed me.
Yep. Nope. I probably wouldn't either. And we've met one time. So what are you building right now? What are you up to?
So what I'm doing now is, it's a problem I've been trying to solve my entire career. I always felt running Yext, 10, 15,000 people come through the organization through the years. And there's two big things I found to be true. So the first is people are terrible at people management. We're just not wired to do it well as humans for a whole variety of reasons. The other thing that tends to be true is that the people that drive the majority of value for an organization tend to be the people that are great at what they do, not necessarily the people that are great at classic professional management. It's more profoundly true for startups and for technology companies than other type of companies. And I think it's going to be more profoundly true in the future. The challenge around all of that, though, is as you grow a company and you build a company, and even as you move through your career and move through management, that's the path to making more money. And you have to do those things well to be successful. You accumulate what I think of as these management chores. These day-to-day things that you just have to do, such as performance reviews, collecting feedback, running one-on-ones and check-ins and stand-ups and all this kind of stuff. A lot of people that are great at what they do don't even like being managers because they have to do all this type of stuff. What we're doing at Windmill, what we talk about doing, is building AI superpowers for managers. And so we're basically automating all of those management chores to free people up to focus on the things they really want to do and are really great at, but also allow individuals to be able to manage larger organizations directly. There's like classic management practice that you should have 6 to 8 direct reports. There's no like law of physics you're breaking if you have 12 direct reports. Like, why is that true? And I won't bore you with the whole reason it is the common thinking, but you hear people like Jensen that has 40 direct reports. I know Howard runs Rome this way, where he has like 30 direct reports. Steve Jobs would talk about like how they don't have like middle professional managers. They have people that are domain experts, that are great at their craft, that are great at what they do. What we're building at Windmill is this tooling that makes it possible for people to run their companies a little different.
What would be the sweet spot of company size? Like over 10 employees, 20?
So our smallest right now is 8 employees. Our largest is 800.
Wow. Okay. When did you officially start it? You left a year and a half ago. So when did you?
We announced it about 2.5 months ago and opened up a wait list. We had about 400 companies that signed up off the wait list, which was great. And so we've been onboarding them. I think the real sweet spot is once you start to have a couple layers of management. I think that's where you get the most value.
Got it. And back to first money in, have you raised any venture capital for the new business?
We have not yet. We've funded the company ourselves. It's a tricky thing. Starting early next year is when I think we'll start thinking through it seriously. I keep thinking maybe now's the right time and start talking to a couple of folks, but the right answer for us is always to focus on the product, it seems like. And now we're starting to get some momentum and start to get a little bit larger customers, which is exciting. In terms of company building, we'll see what it looks like, but I don't think we need a giant team to do what we want to do.
Do you have a co-founder for this business?
Yeah, so I have 2 co-founders, Max Shaw. Max started at Yext as an IC, and he left about a year before I did as our Yext global head of product. And he's just a brilliant product and engineering leader. And my other co-founder, his name is Mark Tanner. He had some really interesting early stints. Probably the most interesting is he was the one who ran technology at WeWork. And he was on the roadshow with Adam Newman doing like all the demos and all that kind of stuff. Talk about a front row seat to a rapidly scaling organization. He's got great perspective.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, thank you so much for this, Brian. It is a really interesting story, and it's great to hear things full circle. A lot of the companies I'm meeting with are amazing, and they're all very much still pre-IPO. So it's interesting to hear it now that you've taken a company public. Thank you again. This was fantastic.
My pleasure. Thanks.